All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another How to Hex. I am Izzy, your host and hexpert or hex expert. And today we're going to be talking about no-code workflows. I don't know if you tuned into our spring release content from last week or maybe the week prior. Um, but as a quick recap, and I suppose I'll show, not tell. Um, Last week, we released a huge tranche of new product features that are aimed at bringing all of the analytical power of Hex, which has traditionally been sort of like a super technical analytics power tool for data scientists and data analysts who know SQL and Python and whatnot. Um, we released a ton of features aimed at less technical users who are maybe more familiar with point and click business intelligence tools or perhaps with Excel spreadsheets, and are enabling them to use all the power of the Hex platform and work in the same place, the same workspace as the technical people. So you have kind of your entire company together collaborating on data. Pretty cool stuff. I think rather than browse through this blog post, I'm actually just going to show you the new features in action. And if you have specific things you're interested in or curious about, let me know in the chat, and I will make sure to get to all of your questions and point at any specific features or knock on any functionality that you're interested in. Okay. Without further ado, let's head over to Hex. I'll make my screen a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll kill the sidebar, but we can go bigger still. Okay, so this is the Hex homepage for those that aren't familiar. And, this is our demo workspace, so it's a little bit messy and has some untitled projects and some sort of old demos. But right off the bat, you'll notice one of the new features that we released in this big push to enable less technical members of sort of the non-data team to use Hex, which is that some of these assets have really clear markers that they're approved or valuable. And these are endorsed statuses that a workspace admin has configured. So some member of the data team, actually, I set this up in our demo workspace, but in your workspace, a member of the data team would go in and configure all of these project statuses and say, okay, if I mark a project as approved, I want this to be considered endorsed. And you can even choose to enforce a review on any updates to projects that have been marked with this status so that they kind of always stay up to date and always have eyes on them. And then as a user, when I'm exploring around for projects or if I'm like searching for something, or even if I'm browsing for data, I'll be able to really easily see what data is approved versus, like what is just some random staging data or something that maybe isn't accurate or hasn't been updated in a while. So that's the first thing. And we'll sort of flow through a typical analytics workflow. We'll answer some questions with data from the point of view of a less technical user. So the first thing, obviously, is just um, understanding what assets are approved for use, whether they're a dashboard to consume or a piece of data to start a project. And actually, this whole data browser experience is also something that's brand new. This data browser gives everyone, again, technical and non-technical users, a window into your data warehouse. And we can see that we can browse through our entire data warehouse, as well as any other sources you've connected, browse through schemas, and look at tables. Again, we have this clear endorsement so that people know if they are looking at an asset that's approved or verified or accurate. And then I can see a preview of this data to sort of get a sense of it, make sure that it is what I'm looking for. I can see metadata about it that's synced from dbt, or actually admins, if they click this Manage Properties tab, can add custom context here that will only be in Hex. So if you wanted to expose something specific, you can write that there too. And this applies on columns as well. So, I can browse through all of this data and maybe we'll look at our e-commerce schema and I'll look for order items. I can look at columns, be like, okay, yeah, this is exactly what I want. And then accessing this data is as easy as clicking open in project as and choosing how I want to inspect this data. I'll choose a table cell. And now without writing a single SQL query or even having to know what SQL is, we're in a new Hex project with this data loaded up as a table. And this is a big table, so it might take a second to load. Cool. So now we're in a Hex project, and I'm going to assume that maybe like half of the audience has seen Hex projects before and half of you haven't. So I'm going to sort of give a quick overview. Um, Hex projects are in a notebook interface. You can see right here we're in the notebook. And all this means is that logic is broken up into individual cells that are sort of stacked linearly. So here we have a table cell, which is the first cell in our notebook. And we can sort of work with the data in here. It's really easy for me to reformat this and change this to a currency. And later we'll come back and do some actual spreadsheet calculations. But you can filter this down, resort it, whatever you want to do. But to keep working with this data, what you do is you chain cells onto it. So I can click Visualize and Chart and chain a chart cell onto this table cell. And now I'm in a chart building experience. The beautiful thing about this is that everything is sort of compartmentalized, but you don't have to open like 50 different tabs and 5 different tools to look at your data and query it, and then maybe visualize it by copying it into Excel, etc. Everything is here in its own like unique little atomic organized interface, but they're connected to one another. And you can actually see this connection really obviously if you open the graph, where you can sort of get a flowcharty sense of your entire project. And as they get more complicated, this can be really helpful. Okay, so I'm actually going to delete this for now. And we're going to walk through everything that's new for no-code users in this table cell. So again, this table cell is hitting a database table from our warehouse directly. There's no SQL query needed. There was actually no modeling needed to be done by the data team or the data engineering team. They sort of built this clean order items table somewhere in a DBT model, pushed it into the warehouse, and now I, as a business user or a stakeholder, can access it directly in Hex and start working with it. So I can see all this data, scroll through it, and maybe we'll filter this data down. Let's say I only want to look at orders that have been completed. So I can click right here, click filter, and then I'll set this to be complete. We'll let this run for a second. And the cool thing about this is that it's actually running over the entire scale of my data in my warehouse, pretty much no matter how big that data set is. So right now we've only got 45,000 rows returning. I'm actually going to change this table to work with something bigger just to really emphasize the fact that Hex can work with really big data scale. So we'll grab this events table instead of order items, because I think this is a few million rows. So we'll let this run. I'll have to remove that status. Oh, and we have an alt. Our calculation doesn't work anymore because now we changed the table, so I'll delete that formula. Okay, so now we're working with 2.5 million rows. And you can see how fast this is returning. So, as somebody used to working in spreadsheets, I'm pretty much able to work with this data just how I would in a spreadsheet, but at a scale that's larger than a spreadsheet can support. I think that the Excel spreadsheet limit is something like 1 million and some change. Yeah, 1,000,048. So we're working with roughly double the amount of data that you could actually physically put into an Excel spreadsheet. But I have a really, really similar interface onto it. Okay, so let's filter this data down again. And maybe we'll actually filter it down with a calculation. So maybe I want to look at all product events that were involving shorts. And it's kind of annoying because this data doesn't have just a like clothing type column. We have this URL for an event, but that's not actually that helpful. And I don't, for this exercise, know how to write the SQL to do a regular expression extract or whatever. But I'm pretty handy in Excel, and I can use Excel functions right here. So we'll add a new formula, a new calculation. We'll call this is short, or maybe shorts. And let's say contains, and then we'll say shorts as our search text, and we'll choose this URI column. And then when we hit enter, oh, what did I do wrong? argument was text column, but expect this like, oh, I think I got this backwards. Um, yeah, I did. I got it backwards. Maybe I don't know Excel actually. So now we hit enter, and now remember, we're working with like 2.5 million rows of data here, but this executed really, really quickly. On the back end, it actually compiled into SQL and ran in the warehouse, which is super cool. But all that we care about is that we were able to really quickly create this derived column based on a value here. So we can see that this is a shorts row, this isn't a shorts row, and now we can do some cool stuff with this. One of the things that you can do with calculated columns or with any column is you can do conditional formatting for them to really easily make certain things pop. So I'm going to pop open the format menu, and now I can select my is shorts column, which is calculated, and I can say, oops, I gotta scroll down a little. That's silly. Or we'll just say it's false, and we'll set this to red. And so now all the red rows, or all the false rows rather, are going to be highlighted in red. We can really easily pluck out the true rows. You can do this with categorical columns like is shorts. You can also do it with numeric columns to get like a profit gradient or something, which maybe we'll do in a second. But you can also filter based on calculations. So remember, the whole point of this was that I only wanted to see shorts related events, but I couldn't access just a shorts field. Well, now that I've created a shorts field, I can filter on it. So we'll set is shorts equals true. We'll run this filter. And now our 2.5 million rows actually gets taken down to 36,000 rows that fast. So that's really, 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 really convenient, super fast. Another way you can actually do filtering is with a whole standalone filter cell. So that was its like nice, quick, simple filter, but maybe we want to show all the data here and then do some more complex filtering down below. I can go down here to the little table result tab and choose filter query to create another filter cell. Remember how I said that basically the notebook lets you stack cells together and chain data through them to construct analysis iteratively. So we can rebuild that same filter here. We'll say it's shorts, and we'll say it's true. We can see that we get that same result, but we can add more filters here. So maybe I'll add a filter for only California calls. Cool. And now we have this filter result. I could actually put this down into a table display, or I can visualize it in a chart and dump this data out. And I mean, this isn't a very interesting chart, but it's really, really easy to drag and drop and point and click to see all of this over time. So maybe we'll look at the cities in California that are creating the most sessions. So we'll do a count of created at based on city, and we can see Los Angeles. So this chart cell is really, really easy to use, but there's actually a way to use it that's even easier. If I click this little magic icon or click Command-Shift-M, you can ask for chart updates in natural language. So the reason this is useful is that there's a lot of chart configuration options. And sometimes you know exactly what you want your chart to look like, but you don't know if you have to click the pin to zero thing or the grid style thing or change the tick count or add a series. And being able to just ask for what you want in natural language would be really, really helpful. So maybe all I want to do is just sort this so that it's like, I actually don't even know the word for it, like that it's descending in the right way so we can kind of see the long tail. So I'll say like sort by the y-axis so we can see the long tail. And again, without knowing exactly what I want or exactly the buttons to click to do this, Magic will do exactly what I wanted. And now I have this long tail visualized easily so I can see LA, San Diego, San Jose, makes sense, places that people would want to be browsing for shorts. And then over here, we see places like, Eureka, where perhaps they're less shorts oriented, although everywhere in California is shorts oriented. Okay, so just to recap what we just did, we pulled in data from the data warehouse without having to write SQL or even know that SQL was a thing that existed. We were able to browse it, even though it was millions of rows. We were able to add a spreadsheet calculation that basically gave us something to filter on, again, even though it was millions of rows. We formatted this to look beautiful. We added a filter on it in this sort of secondary filter step. And then we visualize that result. And you can kind of imagine this workflow just continuing and continuing and continuing. So we can add a pivot cell that actually takes the output of this chart cell. If we wanted to filter this down visually, then all we need to do is, once this loads, just scrub over this. And maybe we only want to select these like top, I don't know, we don't even have to be precise. We'll just like sort of grab this top chunk of cities that are like our most shorts browsing cities. We'll keep just those and it'll handle creating that big list for us. And then down here in this pivot cell, we'll just change this to be the chart result. And now, again, we're sort of chaining our data through all of the cells in this notebook, and we can sort of go back and see our process the whole way. And everything's really easy to understand. We can go back and change things individually and see the outputs as we go, but we're able to iteratively construct this analysis without writing any code. So now maybe we just want to like take a look at this over time. We had sort of our total graph in that chart above, but let's look at just the total number of sessions over time. So I'll do a session count. We'll look at created at, and I kind of want to look at it by like quarter, maybe. That's higher resolution than month. And maybe I'll actually drag this over here to columns, and we'll take a look at the traffic source. See, like where is the shorts traffic coming from? And let's just change this to year so that it's easier to visualize. Sweet. So now we've seen our data in a totally different way. It's really, really easy to pluck out that, oh, it actually looks like email traffic is a lot of our shorts traffic. We could really easily compare this to the unfiltered data set. So remember when I popped up here and we had actually created our is shorts filter right in this table, which would mean that this table result output was filtered to only be shorts. And then I was like, actually, let's not do that. Let's filter it down separately so that we maintain the sanctity of this cell. The reason I did that is because now we have both a filtered result and we have our original unfiltered result. So we can do a comparison. So I'm going to duplicate this pivot cell. And then instead of chart result, I'm going to change this to look at table result. And now we can sort of get a sense of whether or not that that same ratio holds true. It kind of looks like it does. Like email is our most our largest traffic source globally, not just when it comes to shorts purchases in a select subset of states in California. But we can see that other things like YouTube is actually globally much higher performing than it is here. So perhaps we might want to run some YouTube ads for shorts in Southern California, since we see good results for that overall. Maybe we should try it out in California. Okay, so I think I've gone through most of the key cell types here. There's also maps, which are super handy. Might have to rerun everything. Boo, boo, boo. So you can visualize your data in a map without having to write any code again. There's components that you can import work that your other teammates have done without having to sort of go back to the drawing board. And there's single value visualizations, which we like to call big ass numbers colloquially, to push this again. So you can build like beautiful sort of classic report style outputs. I don't know why this isn't working. Well, we'll delete that for now. Okay, so I think you probably get a sense of the general workflow. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'll repeat myself one more time. So we can query data directly from the warehouse, work with it here without writing any code, change the formatting, sort it, filter it, use calculations to build derived columns based on it with like classic spreadsheet syntax with, all of the goodies. Oh, I forgot, you can also add total cells here. So we can look at the total number of cities we have, or if we had like a price or a profit column, then you could look at the total sum of that. We can look at maybe like what the median sequence number is. It's really, really easy to add these and then reference them later. And again, remember, these are running over 2.5 million rows of data. Then we can sort of chain analysis on top of this without writing any code with filter cells, chart cells to visualize it. And then you can actually use your chart cells as a visual filter to filter that data down further. And chart cells are way more powerful than we dug into. Like we can group this by traffic source to sort of approximate that pivot cell that we had below, where now we can see the breakdown and get that same insight that we had before, which like email is sort of our biggest driver, except for in a couple places like Hayward, where Facebook reigns supreme. Um, Put it into a pivot cell to reshape it. And then the neat thing about keeping our data sort of atomically separated in these cells is that we can really, really easily compare one result to another just by duplicating a cell and pointing it at a different data source. So now we've sort of created a bunch of cells here. We can add context, like you can write text and be like, looks like email is generally our greatest source of shorts related and all traffic, except for in a few specific locales, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. That's great. And then what was the thing that we noticed down here? Oh, it was that like YouTube performs pretty well globally, but we don't see huge lift in California. Shorts traffic from YouTube may be worth investing in either tweaking or updating our UTMs for that. So we can add context here that someone could consume just as they browse this notebook. But the second cool part of Hex you can do, again, without writing any code, we'll give this a name, is build an app or a report from your work that you can send it to someone really, really, really quickly. So let's take this and we'll build something that we can send to someone and have them explore around a little bit. So let's be like, call this like Traffic Explorer. Maybe we'll make this just a little smaller and we'll call this cell like global traffic events because this is like sort of that unfiltered view. Maybe we'll drag in a piece of text here and call this like filtered data views. And then we can actually leave this filter cell here in the report that we're going to send to someone. And we could decide to allow app users to configure all parts of the filter, which means they can add filters and whatnot, or we can give them a little bit more guardrails and only let them edit the values of the filter. So we can say like they could choose a different state to look at. We'll let them configure all parts of the filter so they can change this however they want. Then maybe I'll sort of reorient this a little bit. I'll drag this up here to match with that. Drag this here. Boop. Okay. And now all I have to do is click publish, and we'll let this run for a moment. And once I've published this, I'll basically get a URL that I can send to anyone, and they'll be able to, browse this data, read my insights or my advice, and then actually explore the data themselves. And once this is published, I'll show you how they can actually go beyond just using this filter cell. So we'll give that 1 second. Looks like it's pretty much done. Cool, it's published, or it's almost published. One of the things that we won't dive super deep into, maybe in another session we will, is reviews, which is a really, really great way to collaborate with the rest of your team. So I don't know if you remember when I was talking about those statuses, I mentioned that if you put an endorsed status on a project, it will require a peer review. You can request a review on any project, even if it's not endorsed, if you just want a second pair of eyes. But if we add an approved status here, then we actually need a review. You can't publish without a review, or not that one, but one of these. Maybe I hadn't set it on any of them. But if I had chosen to keep that toggle enabled, the publish button would go away and it would just say like, you must request a review here. I'll take this off. And when you request a review, your reviewer can see this like really nice diff view. And if we had made some changes to this app, they would be able to compare the past changes, both code, well, in this case, no code, but like all of the config changes with the resulting data output also, any changes to the text, etc. So it's a really great way to collaborate with your team, especially if you have like code users and no code users all working in one place. It's important to make sure that everything is accurate and trusted. So I'm going to publish this. We'll open it in a new tab. And this is the report that we built without writing a single line of code in like 10 minutes, more or less, maybe 15. Um, it shows somebody a ton of data, gives them an interface into filtering this data down themselves, and then pulls out a couple of specific insights that I want to highlight about a really specific kind of traffic over time and that traffic source. And yeah, this is totally interactive, so someone could change this to be like New York, and it will rerun all of this. So we'll go back and get that data from the warehouse, pass it through the filter cell to take it down from that initial 2.5 million rows down to 477 rows. So, well, we don't have a lot of traffic in New York. And then visualize this in these downstream cells. I mentioned that there's another way for people to interact with this report, and that's by using the actual Explore tool. So from any asset, a chart, a visualization, a table in a published app that you've built, anyone can explore from here or view the data underlying that. So if we click View Data here, we'll be able to see those 477 rows that the chart is aggregating. Or perhaps it's only 5 rows that it's aggregating. So you can kind of drill into the underlying data and get a sense of it yourself. What you can also do is explore into all of the data in this sort of like flexible mini project exploration experience. So here we're loading up that whole 2.5 million row sort of raw global table here from the app because I'm like, okay, yeah, I understood Izzy's insights, but I actually kind of want to explore this data myself because I have a different question I want to answer. Like I'm actually interested in like sweaters, not shorts. So I'm gonna pop this open and explore. I'm gonna edit this formula, and I see that like, oh, this is how Izzy built the shorts filter. Change this to sweater. It's sweater. Change that. And then it's really, really easy for me to rebuild a chart here that will show me the total sweater event traffic over time, and we can sort of add that same filtering on traffic source once this loads. My Wi-Fi is a little suspect today. Okay, there we go. So that traffic source, and we'll aggregate this by month. And then once this reloads, we'll have basically taken the report that Past Me created, explored it, understood the insights from it, and then said, okay, I want to strike off on my own actually and keep exploring this data without writing any code. And from this Explore interface, I'm able to take the starting off point that the project creator used and build my own insights in this really, really lightweight experience where I can sort of rebuild things and answer my questions and change this chart to look however I want, visualize whatever data I want, use all of those features we talked about, like calculations, totals. And then if I want to go even deeper beyond just this interface, I can click Open a New Project, and it'll bring me into a new Hex project right where I just was working from. And I'll be able to sort of keep working and pivoting and filtering and visualizing this data in an entirely new project. So just to sort of go back to what we were talking about, it's the same concept of the notebook, right? You start with a piece of data, you can explore it without writing any code, you can filter it down, reshape it, transform it, visualize it, pull out some insights from it, and then add text to sort of explain what you found. Then again, without writing any code, you can turn that into an app that you can share with anyone, and they can sort of see this curated but interactive insight or like window into your insights. And then if they want to strike off on their own and keep exploring this data even beyond the little bits of interaction that you've given them, they can do that and sort of go through the same notebook-based workflow that you did, starting from a jumping off point that you've given them. It's this really powerful way to work that honestly it's historically been reserved for like technical notebook users and people that are familiar with writing SQL and Python and other programming languages. And it's a really powerful workflow that we're really excited to open up to less technical folks, no code users, Excel whizzes, etc. I'm really excited to see what you all build with this stuff. So with that, I think I'll go back to this app and I think we'll take some questions. Thanks. Feel free to just pop questions into the webinar chat and I can get to them as they come in. You can also use the official Q&A feature if you'd like. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, I think I'll share this resource out into the chat and we'll send it in the follow-up email too. So you can check out this notebook that I built. Oh, I better share it with everyone. Um, I'll share this with the world and you'll be able to actually copy this project into a Hex workspace. So if you follow that link that I sent, oh, I suppose you can't see my screen now, but if you follow that link, you'll be able to click a button to duplicate it into your own project and get started there. Oh, question from Brooks. I know reviews will have a separate session, but if I wanted to share feedback on a project shared with me, um, oh, my mistake. Sorry, I sent the link to myself, not to everyone. So here's a link to that project that you'll be able to duplicate and keep working from. Brooks is interested in how you can share feedback on a project shared with me. Yeah, sure. Let's walk through it really quickly. I am going to how am I going to set this up best? So I'm actually going to stop sharing and I'm going to share my whole screen for one moment. Well, I wonder if I can request a review for myself. Let's see. Okay. So we're going to edit this somehow. We're going to like change this to be false. So no shorts. And then maybe we'll change the configuration here to not look at color source. And we'll change this to be like, we'll say like Facebook or something. So I've made a couple changes to this app. And now I'm going to click publish changes. Because this is an approved app, we'll pretend that it requires one. So I'm going to request a review. I wonder if I can request a review for myself. No, I can't. But essentially, and I will do this in a different session, I'll send you a video in which you can look at it. A reviewer will have an interface that looks exactly like this, and they'll see this notebook diff. And they'll be able to sort of peruse through this, see all of the changes that have been made, both to the configuration. So here it says like email, here it says Facebook, and then they can also see the code, or sorry, the output changes. So I can see like, oh, okay, they changed this chart to not be grouped. They changed this stuff. And if I was really sharp-eyed, I could be like, wait, like, no, Facebook is not our greatest source of shorts related content. And they'd be able to leave a comment. And actually, now that I think of it, this video, which I'll share a link to and you can watch, I believe it includes a review flow that I could show you. Yeah, so just like this, if you can see this, Brooks, you could basically request changes officially from that notebook diff view. You could say like, hey, it looks like Facebook isn't actually one of our top sources. You should change this to be more accurate. And then in order to publish, they would need to address those changes. So that's one way to provide feedback. Another lighter weight way to provide feedback is you can just leave comments on anything. So if it wasn't a like official review workflow and you got shared an app, you could just leave a comment and be like, looks like it's actually Facebook, not email. We're looking at the same data. Um, and then the creator of this app would get a notification that you'd left a comment on it. They'd be able to see that, reply to it, and you could have a conversation about it, and then ultimately resolve it. So I guess you can think about it like you have a sort of like official blocking review related way to do feedback, and you also have just a more casual way to leave comments on both the published view or in the notebook if you're sort of like collaborating on something together and you want to leave comments on a specific cell in the notebook, you can do that as well. Does that answer your question? Sorry, that's a little roundabout. Um, Another question about planning to support a newer version of Python. Well, this is the no code webinar. Um, I believe we are planning to support newer versions of Python. Yes. It's sort of a slow plod forward because of dependencies and making sure that everything works properly, as well as the fact that we keep a ton of Python kernels sort of pre-warmed in order to spin up new notebooks really, really, really fast. And so the more different kinds of, or like the more flavors of Python we support, then the more images we have to sort of keep sitting around on deck, which costs money. So basically, as like customer demand increases for newer or alternate Python versions or kernels, I think you can expect us to add that. But yeah, you can also reach out to support directly if you're interested in setting up a custom image for your company, because I don't know if you saw that here, but we can create custom kernels for you that not only have a specific version of Python, but have a specific like environment setup or certain pre-built packages or anything like that. But it costs money, as you can imagine, because we have to keep those custom kernels sort of pre-warmed sitting around. Okay. Any more questions? I'll give it a few more minutes for folks to ask further questions about no code. It could also just be about anything Hex in general. I'll share that no code or this link here, Brooks, for you because I think you might find it interesting regarding reviews. Yeah, I recommend checking out all these video series. Every single one of our new features has a video for it on our YouTube channel. You can see we have a whole video about calculations, no code workflows, collaborating together. So definitely check them out because they're a lot more polished than my sort of improvised off the cuff webinar, a lot more efficient at conveying critical information. Um, cool. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you everyone for tuning in. As a reminder, you can watch past recordings of all past How to Hexes at hex.tech/events. If you go down to on demand, you can see all of our past ones, which are about more technical code forward features of Hex. Like, please, yes, of course. Here's the link to that. And also from here, you'll be able to register for future How to Hex sessions, which I hope to see you at. Yeah, feel free to email me with any further questions, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for coming.